You're listening to the Divorce and Your Money Show, the #1 divorce podcast in the United States. I'm your host, Sean Lehman, MBA and certified divorce financial analyst. Be sure to get a copy of my new book called, surprise, surprise, Divorce and Your Money, How to Avoid Costly Divorce Mistakes. You can get a copy on Amazon or by visiting divorceandyourmoney.com. While you're on the website, be sure to book a strategy session with me. We have 30-minute strategy sessions, and you have two options. One in which where you can just speak directly about issues that apply to you, regardless of whether you're at the beginning of the divorce, thinking about what you want to do, in the middle, trying to figure out the right path to take, or at the end of your divorce and you're trying to figure out the best options for you. And also there we have a document review appointment where we can review your financial affidavit, your divorce settlement, or other documents related to your divorce, and also include a strategy session on top of that to make sure that whatever you're preparing or about to sign is in your best interest. With that, on to this week's episode. In this episode and the next several episodes, I want to discuss divorce attorneys and family law attorneys and the details and choices amongst them and how you can figure out whether or not you have a good attorney, how to find a good attorney to make sure your attorney is fighting for and advocating for you, and the complexities of the attorney selection and just relationship management process. I'm a huge fan of divorce attorneys and having them help represent you, with the but that, like in all industries, there are people who are really good at their job and some people who, let's just say politely, may need some improvement. And attorneys are no different. There are some excellent family law attorneys out there who will do a good job for you at a reasonable price. And there are some attorneys out there who will cause a mess of things and you end up spending tens of thousands of dollars or more, and on top of that, not getting anything done. And I want you to avoid that scenario. But in this particular episode, I want to focus on, do you need an attorney? And what situations that might exist where you don't need an attorney to help you. And let's just start with the basics is, do you need one? Well, your attorney is going to have, if you work with one, is probably going to have one of the biggest impacts in terms of how this divorce process goes for you. And same is the selection of the attorney of your spouse. A good attorney or good set of attorneys will keep things moving forward at a reasonable clip. People will, of course, have disagreements. This is divorce, but they'll do them civilly. And you won't end up spending more money and time and energy than you have to. And if you get a bad attorney, this process is going to be an additional nightmare on top of nightmares. Not only will you lose a lot in your divorce, and when I say lose a lot, I mean money, time, energy, but the outcome will likely be pretty poor as well. And so you need to be very careful about who you choose as an attorney. And so it's a very important subject, one of the most important things that you can do when it comes to the divorce process. But some people ask me, I get this question all the time, is do I need an attorney or can I do it myself? And I know a lot of people are hesitant to fork over thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to an attorney to help with their issues. And sometimes, I get people who'll say, well, my issues are pretty simple. I think I can handle most of this. And a lot of times I'll talk to you and say, yeah, you have a pretty good handle on things, but you should still consult an attorney or at least consider it. And there are other times where people don't really need that much legal help because they and their spouse agree on most of the issues. And so can they do it themselves? And so there's a few things I tell people when it comes to whether or not they need an attorney. The first thing, of course, is that divorce is complicated. There are a lot of details in order to come up with a divorce settlement, a divorce agreement, or ultimately, if you are one of the handful of people who has to go to trial, I mean, there's a lot of details involved, even in the simplest of situations. And you need to be prepared to have a handle on that and understand all of those complexities. The second thing is it's very, very easy to make mistakes in the divorce process. There's the mistakes that people think of, which are they getting the right financial deal for them? Did they structure a custody agreement the right way? Are they doing what's within the bounds of the law when they come up with an agreement? Those are common things, but there's also issues where did you fill out that divorce paperwork the right way? And is the clerk going to reject it? And you have to reject it after 60 days of it sitting there in the office and say, oh, you didn't fill this out correctly. And therefore you got to redo it and resubmit everything. And it's a lot of just little details that add up when it comes to the divorce process. The third thing is almost obvious, but it can be really hard to see the big picture when you are going through divorce. You're in it. You are in the middle of this situation. This is happening to you, your life, your family, and everything that related to it. And sometimes it's very hard to depersonalize and just make smart decisions. It's very, very tough to make the best decisions for yourself oftentimes in an emotional process when you're going through the middle of it. And so having someone like an attorney can provide you guidance from the outside to help you and keep you on the right path and make the right decisions. Or I'm going to bring up two more points. One is regret is powerful. So this is point number 4. What you don't want to happen, and one of the most challenging things after this process is over, is looking back and saying, I wish I did X, Y, or Z. And it's something that's very, very common because life is complicated, divorce is complicated. We all get that. And you want to make sure that you're covering your basis for everything that could happen later down the line. And just during the process, you don't have these regrets 6 months later, a year later, 5 years later, when you're looking back as to how you handled certain things in this process. And one of the things, I'm kind of shifting gears slightly as I make this next comment, but one of the things I talk about in my document review appointments all the time is making sure the what ifs are covered. And when I think of some of the best attorneys that I know, I mean, there's a lot of factors that make great attorneys, but one of the defining characteristics is they're really, really good at understanding the what ifs. So what if you can't sell a house in the agreed time frame? What if someone doesn't agree or doesn't follow through on this child support agreement? What if the custody schedule needs changing? What if someone gets sick or a child gets sick? How is that handled? What if there's an issue with a split of the retirement account? And really good attorneys can anticipate and plan for and write in documentation and help you negotiate what if scenarios that are very favorable for you and make the long-term process of this divorce smoother. And then the last point I'm going to bring up is that you need to protect yourself. There's just a lot of details, as I've said before, in terms of the divorce process. And you don't always know where you might be going wrong, where you could get a better deal, or where it's okay to give up a little bit. It's a negotiation. And you want to make sure that the agreement you are coming to is a fair agreement for all parties. It's not about, quote unquote, screwing your spouse. That's not the goal here. The goal is to come up with a solution that both of you can live with for the rest of your lives. It's not going to be fun. It's not necessarily going to be perfect, but the goal is to get to that point and get to that point sooner or later at a reasonable cost. And a good divorce attorney can help you do that. So that was all pro attorney, of course, and I'm going to be getting into lots of different details to think about when it comes to an attorney. But what situations might you not need an attorney or need very little legal help? And I have just 3 scenarios. And even in all 3 scenarios, if I were writing this down, I'd put a little asterisk next to it to say, yes, but still you might want to contact an attorney. But 3 things to consider. The first is that if both of you have a very clear picture, both of you as spouses understand your assets and your debts. You have a clear understanding of where the money goes, what's there. You agree upon all the values of things, and there's not going to be a lot of disputes about it. But if you know it, that's a good check mark that you might not need as much legal help. The second thing is that you and your spouse don't have complex custody issues. If you have any kind of custody issue, or it's going to be a discussion or a potential conflict later, get an attorney to work it out for you, because there's just so many details. I mean, I'm a financial specialist. By no means am I a custody specialist. But from working with enough attorneys and reading enough agreements, I can tell you there are so many details that attorneys know and have worked through over decades in terms of getting the right custody schedules and handling all the complexities of raising kids and co-parenting that they already have planned, that oftentimes someone who's just trying to do it themselves doesn't know. But if you don't have custody issues or the kids are grown, maybe you don't need as much legal help. And then the last point is, if you and your spouse can work out a reasonable settlement, then by all means, save the money. I said for all of those points, as there's an asterisk, I'm going to get into some options in future episodes as to different ways you can use attorneys without going all in and necessarily writing a $10,000, $25,000, $50,000 check for each of you to get the appropriate legal help that you need. But one of the things is the more that you can agree upon yourself between you and your spouse, and the less fighting there is, the less help you'll need from an attorney. And so that's something to think about as you choose. Now, the nature of this podcast and the nature of what I do, unfortunately, I don't get to work with too many people who are in ideal scenarios. It happens every week, but the vast majority of people are in very complex financial circumstances and are not in full agreement with their spouse, which is why they're listening to this podcast, or you contact me and we do a coaching call. But when you can, I always, particularly for the people who are early in the process or haven't filed yet, I always say, look, if you can work out a lot of this stuff in advance, you can minimize the need for attorneys down the line and the cost you're going to have to pay as it goes through this divorce process. So a lot of things to consider in just a short amount of time. I also have a great section, not to over promote my book, but in my book, Divorcing Your Money, How to Avoid Costly Divorce Mistakes, there is a ton of information on how to choose an attorney in there, because it's one of the most important things that you can do during your divorce process. And I will be talking about it a lot more in future episodes. Now, before you go, I want to make sure you get some really important information. I'm going to tell you about a few things that may be of interest to you. First, as a favor, is if you could leave a review. If you're on the iTunes store, leave a review on iTunes, or if you search Divorcing Your Money on a website called Trustpilot or on Google, you can leave a review there. It's quick, it's anonymous, it only takes a few seconds, and I really, really appreciate your feedback. I have lots of reviews on iTunes and on Trustpilot, and I appreciate hearing your stories. Also, on divorceandyourmoney.com, you can get lots of great information. Of course, you can book a 30-minute strategy session directly with me. There's two types of strategy calls you can book. Just a normal strategy session, which we discuss the questions that are most pressing to you, regardless of where you are in the divorce process, be at the beginning, towards the end, or in the middle. Doesn't really matter. There's lots of great information we can cover during that strategy call. And also, we have a document review call. It's been one of the biggest things that we've done over the past year, which is you can send me your documents, be it your financial affidavit, a settlement agreement, or other documents that you would like for me to review. And then I review those in advance of the call, and then we get to discuss them in depth as part of a strategy session and get specific answers to some of the specific documents and things that you are considering. Also, for those who need ongoing support, we do have a few options for ongoing support, but regardless, it all starts with a coaching call that you can book at divorceandyourmoney.com. Don't forget to also get a copy of my new book. It's called Divorcing Your Money, How to Avoid Costly Divorce Mistakes. It's available on my website or also on Amazon. You just look me up and make sure you get the new edition. It is filled with excellent information regarding the divorce process, and I know that you will find it helpful. And once you've read the book, be sure to leave a review. That really helps me. I appreciate your feedback, and it also helps other people as they try and find this information. And finally, last but not least by any means, is on the store at divorceandyourmoney.com. If you click on the store button, you can get access to the full archive of podcast episodes. There's over 200 episodes, and what's great about the store link is that the episodes are organized in neat buckets. And they're organized by topic, so it's very easy to follow along with the information. And it is easy to pick out the key topics that matter most to you. And you can get all of those podcast episodes in the store. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Sean Lehman, MBA and Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. Take care.